Welcome to the Synthesis of Yoga, the book that changed my life. We are on the third chapter of the part 1, the Yoga of Divine Works. And this chapter is titled Self-Surrender in Works, the Way of the Gita. And we are on the paragraph number 5. We are starting episode 51. In the previous episode, we saw the aim of integral yoga, where the ego-driven shallow surface life is to be replaced with the divine life, where the desire is to be replaced with the self-existent delight of the spiritual being. The mind and its narrow, limited thought process is to be replaced with the in-streaming of the shadowless, luminous wisdom. And the will has to be replaced with the spontaneous, unstumbling will, the flow of the unfallen force, the divine Shakti. And the heart and its shallow, limited human emotions are to be replaced with the deep soul of love and delight that is behind our emotional being. When all this gets established, then there is the birthing of the new race, the Superman. And that's our aim. And let's see what Aurobindo is building up in this chapter, the Yoga of Divine Works. And this particular chapter is Self-Surrender in Works. In the ordinary human existence, an outgoing action is obviously 3/4 or even more of life. The life bound by ego is an outgoing life, tied to the senses. And Sri Aurobindo is saying 3/4 of our life and even more is of that nature when we live in that superficial outer ego personality and its concern. So in the ordinary human existence, an outgoing action is obviously 3/4 or even more of our life. It is only the exceptions, the saint and the seeker, the rare thinker, poet and artist, who can live more and more, who can live more within themselves. A poet and an artist, these are much more common occurrence in our society. They have a rich inner life. What it means to have a rich inner life, or a life that is going outward. A rich inner life is where your inner explorations, whether it is in the world of thoughts, ideas, emotions, imaginations, can be rich and exploratory. You can close your eyes and dive deeper into the inner worlds, and they are very real and as tangible and concrete as you would experience the outer world and the material life. For a poet, an artist, these inner conceptions have such a vivid reality. A thinker, a seer, a saint, they all have that access, and even much deeper and higher in the case of a sage, a saint, a seer. that inner exploration and the possibility is there in them. Whereas when the life is turned outward, bound by the ego, it is the outer events that runs your thought process. Whether it is change of weather or the outer social events. These are the driving factors of your normal thought process. Something happening outside, you're responding to it. And the responses are always with reference to the outer incidents. Whereas someone who lives rich in the inner world, who can gradually withdraw from this outer engagement and concentrate on the inner movements and be stimulated by the inner events, inner explorations, inner revelations, inner movements. So it is only the exceptions, the saint and the seeker, the rare thinker, poet, and artist, who can live more within themselves. These indeed, at least in the most intimate parts of their nature, shape themselves more in inner thought and feeling than in the surface act. So shaping oneself, shaping one's life's journey, its explorations, through that inner nuanced explorations, insights, understanding, and that is the determining factor. Whereas an ordinary conventional life is shaped by the external event and their pressures, incidents. And you're only reacting to those external pressures and incidents. It is only when you're able to pull out from that and spend time in the inner richness, thoughts, emotions, perceptions, visions, nuanced understanding, and ability to dive deeper into that dimension and deciding from that nuanced understanding what course your life should take in the outer life. That's how the shift happens from the outer to the inner. It is only the exceptions, the saint and the seer, the rare thinker, poet, and artist who can live more within themselves. These indeed, at least in the most intimate parts of their nature, shape themselves more in inner thought and feeling, shaping themselves more in inner thought and feeling than in the surface act. There is indeed the outer activities, but the shaping happens in the inner thought and feeling. But it is not either of these sides separated from each other, from the other, but rather a harmony of the inner and the outer life, made one in fullness and transfigured into a play of something that is beyond them, which will create the form of a perfect living. So we are looking at a form of a perfect living in which it is not exclusively an inner life nor an exclusive outer life, but a right balance between the two. And on one hand, the ability to explore, dive deeper into the inner dimensions of thought and feeling, and shaping your life from that and bringing that and expressing it into the outer life. That ability to bring this into the outer life is as important as ability to go inward and explore and know the riches of the inner worlds. So it is not either of these sides separated from the other, but rather a harmony of the inner and outer life, made one in fullness and transfigured into a play of something that is beyond them. Now, beyond the outer and the inner, into a deep or a high source, That source coming into this inner and outer life, that is what we are looking at. And transfigured into a play of something that is beyond them, which will create the form of a perfect living. A yoga of works, a union with the divine in our will and acts, and not only in knowledge and feeling. Here is where the yoga of works come. We can have a union in knowledge. We can have a union in feeling. It is insufficient. We need union in works, union with the divine in our will and acts. That's what makes the yoga of works possible. And not only in knowledge and feeling, is then an indispensable and inexpressibly important element of an integral yoga. So it is perfectly possible to unite in feelings with the divine. That is where the devotion and ecstasy of that union come into the picture. That's one aspect of the possible growth. You can also unite in knowledge and receive the omnipresent, omniscient wisdom flowing through you. That too is a great possibility, the yoga of knowledge. But these two are insufficient. There is the potential of action in the world and uniting with the divine will. Without it, this integral perfection will not be possible, integral yoga will not be possible. Therefore, the union in will is indispensable and an inexpressibly important element of an integral yoga. So this Karma Yoga dimension, an integral Karma Yoga, which demands the will to be united, not just knowledge, not just love and feelings. The conversion of our thought and feeling without a corresponding conversion of the spirit and body of our works, the very spirit of work. What is the spirit with which we are engaging in our daily life activities, our professional life? And the body of our work would be a maimed achievement, a limited, deformed achievement if the spirit of the works, very body of the works, and the will united with the divine will is not brought into it, then it will be a very, very limited realization. So he is coming now closer to the yoga of divine works, and the faculty of divine works is will. So the conversion of our thought and feeling without a corresponding conversion of the spirit and body of our works would be a maimed achievement. But if this total conversion is to be done, there must be a consecration of our actions and outer movements as much as of our mind and heart to the divine. So the previous chapter we learned about consecration. Consecrating oneself to the divine. Now, there are nuances of that consecration. One can consecrate thoughts, one can consecrate emotions offered to the divine, but that is insufficient. There is necessity for consecration of our actions and outer movements. There is this energy that is constantly flowing outward into action through speech and bodily gestures and activities. These are to be consecrated to the divine, not just thought and emotion. If this total conversion is to be done, there must be a consecration of our actions and our outer movements as much as of our mind and heart to the divine. There must be accepted and progressively accomplished a surrender of our capacities of working into the hands of a greater power behind us, And our sense of being the doer and worker must disappear. Our personal individual experience is that, first of all, I am separate from everything else. And on the top of it, I am the doer of the works. The work that is happening through me, I am the doer. This sense of doership is some central knot that we need to loosen up so that we recognize that we are just instruments. Work is happening through us, flowing through us. We are not the doers. So this is one important thing. And then surrendering of the capacities. In order to do any work, we need the capacity to do the work. And often we have the idea that this is my capacity and beyond that I cannot. And we limit ourselves to that. When we surrender even our capacities and notion of I am the doer and open to a greater will, then doors open to a greater possibility. There must be accepted and progressively accomplished. It is not accomplished in one go, but progressively. A surrender of our capacities of working into the hands of a greater power behind us. The divine will is already there behind us. It's just that we are not aware because of our identification with this idea that I am the one who is doing. But the deeper truth is, it is the divine will that is acting through everyone and everything everywhere. And our sense of being the doer and worker must disappear. So this is something we need to become conscious of and gradually dismantle. All must be given for a more direct use into the hands of the divine will, which is hidden by these frontal appearances. For by that permitting will alone is our action possible. The divine will is acting, but we are not aware. Therefore, it has to act through us indirectly through the instrumentation of mind, heart, energy, senses, body. And since we have the sense of identification, we don't really see that it is the divine will that is acting. And we create our tiny little island ego and its struggle and its effort. It practically creates distortions in the original direct working of the divine will. In nature, in the growth of trees and life of birds and animals, since they don't have this developed ego as we humans have, developed mind as we humans have, they do not have this distortion and this disconnect, but they are unconscious. The divine will is acting smoothly and freely through the nature. But in man, because we have developed this sense of separation and a separated doer and has the intelligence and trying to solve problems on our own, we disconnect ourselves from the divine will and its force. Therefore, the divine will has to work indirectly through us with all the distortions that takes place. So all must be given for a more direct use. So we need to learn to give up our sense of separation and the sense of doership and the egoistic reactions so that it is possible for the divine to use a direct use. So all must be given for a more direct use into the hands of the divine will, which is hidden by these frontal appearances. It is there hidden. Frontal appearances, our body, our thought, our emotions, our small will, all these are frontal outer appearances. Behind all that is the greater divine will. For by that permitting will alone is our action possible. It's a permitting will. The divine will permits everything, even to disconnect and struggle. All that is allowed. Okay, if you want to struggle and be in that little loop, do it. When you wake up, come back, I can work directly through you. Otherwise, it is allowing, as it is allowing everything in the universe to unfold in its universal being. So it permits everything, including our disconnection. And we have the freedom to recognize this disconnect and acknowledge the greater presence and tune into it. A hidden power is the true Lord and overruling observer of our acts. Very interesting observation here. We feel ourselves to be the observer of our own acts. When we develop self-awareness, it is still at the level of the ego that can observe itself. But behind it is the divine observer, the overruling observer, the greater observer, the seer behind all the seeings. And only he knows through all the ignorance and perversions and deformation brought in by the ego their entire sense and ultimate purpose. So the action that is unfolding through us has its purpose. One is the purpose at an individual level. Then the other is the larger purpose at a collective and a larger universal level, of which we have no idea. All that we can perceive is our tiny little individual will, a few little consequences to our actions and our discernment, judgments based on this observable outer consequences. That's where we are stuck. Whereas this permitting will, the divine will that is behind, that has allowed this action, in spite of all the distortions, perversions, all the limitations, in spite of all that, it allows and it is directing. And this will has the right knowledge, the right understanding of what is intended through a particular instrumentation, particular group of people, what type of work and consequences intended in the world. So a hidden power is the true Lord and overruling observer of our acts. And only he knows through all the ignorance and perversions and deformation brought in by the ego, their entire sense and ultimate purpose. The divine wisdom and will knows the ultimate purpose of all actions happening through everyone. But our individual perspective and tiny little window doesn't know it, and it is operating from a very narrow, limited understanding. There must be effected a complete transformation of our limited and distorted egoistic life and works into a large and direct outpouring of a greater divine life, will, and energy that now secretly supports us. There's a divine life, will, and energy. All these are aspects of that immensity of action of the divine will that is secretly supporting us, and it can have a direct outpouring through the instrumentation if the instrument is ready to recognize its presence and learn to open to its inflow. So there must be effected a complete transformation of our limited and distorted egoistic life and works. Life and works that we do on a daily basis that is unfolding and shaping our journey into the large and direct outpouring of a greater divine life, will, and energy that now secretly supports us. This greater will and energy must be made conscious in us and master. No longer must it remain, as of now, only a superconscious upholding and permitting force. We have our surface consciousness, wakeful state. And there are ranges of consciousness that is way beyond it, which is superconscious. And there are ranges just below it or behind it, we can say subliminal. And below it, the subconscient. So there are ranges of consciousness below, behind, and above. All these are unconscious for us. But that larger unconscious spectrum is classified into superconscious, that which is higher than our present level of consciousness, that which is behind or below. What is behind is referred to as the subliminal, what is below is referred to as the subconscient. And we have to open to that which is superconscious, upholding and permitting force. There is a permitting force which is superconscious, and it gives permission to all that is unfolding through you, around you, in the world. So this greater will and energy must be made conscious in us and master. Basically, we have to become conscious of its operations. No longer must it remain as of now only a superconscious upholding and permitting force. It is there as a superconscious force presiding over, but we have to become conscious of its presence and let it become the living master in the house, the inhabitant, the divine inhabitant. There must be achieved an undistorted transmission through us of the all-wise purpose and process. Undistorted transmission of all-wise purpose and process. This divine wisdom and its will that is acting through all has its purpose as well as its process. Both the purpose and process must be able to flow through us without any distortion. So, an undistorted transmission through us of the all-wise purpose and process of a now hidden omniscient power and omnipotent knowledge. There is an omniscient power, a power that knows the cosmic whole, the entire movements, not just happening inside us, outside us, the entire world in the universe. It's an omniscient power. It is also an omnipotent knowledge, a knowledge that is capable of action anywhere in tiniest particles to the largest wholes. It is operational. So it is an omnipotent knowledge and omniscient power, which will turn into its pure, unobstructed, happily consenting and participating channel of our transmuted nature. So our body, our life energy, our mind, everything become a participating channel when they are transformed. In our transmuted nature, they become a participating channel, happily consenting to this greater operation. So there must be achieved an undistorted transmission through us of the all-wise purpose and process of a now hidden omniscient power and omnipotent knowledge, which will turn into its pure, unobstructed, happily consenting and participating channel of our transmuted nature. This total consecration and surrender and this resultant entire transformation and free transmission make up the whole fundamental means and the ultimate aim of an integral karma yoga. So that it is an integral karma yoga we are looking at, where the inner, outer, and all parts are integrated, harmonized, and made one with the divine will. Even for those whose first natural movement is a consecration, a surrender, and a resultant entire transformation of the thinking mind and its knowledge, or a total consecration, surrender, and transformation of the heart and its emotions. The consecration of works is a needed element in that change. So he is bringing in the three different layers of consecration. And different individuals will have different entry points. So Sri Aurobindo is bringing in three different layers of consecration. And different individuals find their entry point to the yoga, varying according to their natural inclination. Some people enter through the consecration of thought itself. The whole thinking mind and its knowledge, you're consecrating that, you're offering that, surrendering that. There are three things: consecration, a surrender, and a resultant entire transformation. You can consecrate thought, surrender thought, and a resultant entire transformation. One is thought moved by our own individual will. But when we surrender thought, open to the divine knowledge to pour through the entire mind, then thinking process undergoes transformation. Similarly, that's a one entry point. Other is entering through the feelings, the emotions. Here again, a consecration, surrender, and transformation of the heart and its emotions. These two doorways. And the third one is consecration of works, all that we physically do. The will is moving our actions. So we can enter through consecration of knowledge, consecration of love, or the feelings, emotions, or consecration of the will. So even for those who enter through other two, a consecration of works is a needed element in that change if we want an integral Karmayoga. All three are needed. All three have to be brought together, whichever be the doorway of entry. The consecration of will, since this chapter is, this whole part of integral synthesis of yoga is dealing with the yoga of divine works, we are focusing on the divine will and its central importance. Our human will aligning with the divine will in action, not just thoughts and feelings. So even for those whose first natural movement, it's a first natural movement. You start with what is natural to you in the beginning. You may enter through knowledge, you may enter through feelings, you may enter through will. Even for those who entered through a consecration, a surrender, and a resultant entire transformation of the thinking mind and its knowledge, or a total consecration, surrender, and transformation of the heart and its emotions, the consecration of works is a needed element in that change. It's a needed element. Otherwise, although they may find God in other life, they will not be able to fulfill the divine in life. Life for them will be a meaningless, undivine inconsequence. So one can always find the divine in knowledge, in heart, and its emotions, in the dimensions that are beyond this physical world. But life here cannot be fulfilled without bringing in the will of action that is unfolding here as life. They can have other realizations, but without this consecration of the will and daily action and corresponding transformation, the action here on earth will be meaningless. It will be empty. Otherwise, although they may find God in other life, they will not be able to fulfill the divine in life. For life for them will be a meaningless, undivine inconsequence. So we can find many teachers and teachings consider that life here is of no significance. It is, after all, an illusion. And we are trapped in that. We need to get out of it, or that it is inconsequential. Whatsoever you do here in this world for its your sustenance of your bodily life, it's of no significance. All that matters is the realization in the higher planes, in the other worlds. So that is the danger. In order to prevent that, this consecration of the will here in this world and its action is necessary. Not for them the true victory that shall be the key to the riddle of our terrestrial existence. The riddle of our terrestrial existence. Terrestrial existence is our existence in this terra firma, this earth, solid material earth where we exist. The riddle of it, why we have taken birth here. It is not to escape from it. There is a riddle here. There is an evolution unfolding. So, although they may find God in other life, they will not be able to fulfill the divine in life. Life for them will be meaningless, undivine consequence. Not for them the true victory that shall be the key to the riddle of our terrestrial existence. Their love will not be the absolute love triumphant over self. Their knowledge will not be the total consciousness and the all-embracing knowledge. So the love and knowledge, if it is to be all-embracing, it has to embrace this material earth and life and its processes and the very action unfolding through its material envelope. Without it, it will not be an all-encompassing knowledge or an all-encompassing love. It is possible indeed to begin with knowledge or Godward emotion solely. So there is no denial here of possibility of beginning with Godward knowledge or Godward emotion. It is perfectly all right to begin with any one of that, or with both together, and to leave works for the final movement of the yoga. So you may start with the knowledge, you may start with love, turn towards the divine, or both together, and keep the works as the last final movement of yoga. But there is then this disadvantage that we may tend to live too exclusively within, subtilized in subjective experience, shut off in our isolated inner parts. There we may get incrusted in our spiritual seclusion and find it difficult later on to pour ourselves triumphantly outwards and apply to life our gains in the higher nature. So if we put aside work as a last stage that I will take up, let me focus only on knowledge or love or both of them together. If we do that, then there is a high chance that we may develop that inner gains in the higher nature, but down the line, when it comes to pouring ourselves into action in the world, we may find it very, very difficult. That is the problem. Especially when we start thoroughly enjoying that inward journey, inner realizations, then pouring that into this world become increasingly difficult, because you will find that it is not able to express itself. Everything gets distorted and deformed, and that can get very frustrating, and that is a disadvantage. So there is then this disadvantage that we may tend to live too exclusively within, subtilized in subjective experience, shut off in our isolated inner parts. There we may get incrusted in our spiritual seclusion. There is a crust that forms, and we get trapped in that, in our spiritual seclusion, and find it difficult later on to pour ourselves triumphantly outwards and apply to life our gains in the higher nature. How do we apply the inner gains into the outer nature, outer life, social complexities, social problems? Engaging with all that become increasingly challenging. When we turn to add this external kingdom also to our inner conquests, we shall find ourselves too accustomed to an activity purely subjective and ineffective on the material plane. ineffective in the material plane. We can be very effective in the inner planes, in the inner realizations, inner travel, inner journeys, out of body travels, and all kinds of experiences we can indulge happily. But when it comes to action in the material world, we find it handicapped. So when we turn to add this external kingdom to our inner conquest, we shall find ourselves too much accustomed to an activity purely subjective and ineffective on the material plane. There will be an immense difficulty in transforming the outer life and the body. Outer life and the body become the major obstacle. Or we shall find our action does not correspond to the inner light. Now, this is a very common experience for everyone, even when you have not gone very deep into yoga. Our knowledge and our self-awareness can grow very fast. So, our action on one hand lags behind. We know that this is the thing to be done, but in spite of knowing, we cannot do. We also know that these are the things not to be done, and in spite of knowing that, our bodily action yet continue to perpetuate things that you know you should not be doing. So that gap between knowing and doing become very, very acute and unbridgeable. Our action does not correspond with the inner light. It still follows the old accustomed mistaken paths, still obeys the old normal imperfect influences. The truth within us continues to be separated by a painful gulf from the ignorant mechanism of our external nature. Our bodily existence, it is an external ignorant mechanism through which the transmission has to happen into this material world. If that transmission is to happen, if we don't train the will and action, it is not possible. So there is this obscurity that happens. There is growing light within, but no way to radiate it out into life and its demands and deal and transform the life and its context. That possibility become increasingly limited if we live exclusively in the inner realizations. We shall find that our action does not correspond with the inner light. It still follows the old accustomed mistaken paths. Accustomed mistaken paths, the habituated conditioned responses. Still obeys the old normal imperfect influences. Obeying all the influences from surrounding life or the inner unconscious life. All that is influencing, and we obey and surrender to that. That's an error. The truth within us continues to be separated by a painful gulf from the ignorant mechanism of our external nature. This gap between the inner light and this clumsy outer action, it becomes a painful gulf. This is a frequent experience because in such a process, the light and power comes to be self-contained and unwilling to express themselves in life or to use the physical means prescribed for the earth and her processes. Earth and her processes. Earth's processes are material processes, and we have taken this material body, and if we are to act in the material life, we have to master that domain. So the light and power comes and becomes self-contained. It is contained inside. The light and power has come, but it has not been brought out to the outer instrumentation. And then these powers are unwilling to express themselves in life or to use the physical means prescribed for the earth and earth processes. Physical means. The material means are there for the action in the world. We cannot use. This light and force cannot flow into it. It is as if we were living in another, a larger and subtler world and had no divine hold. perhaps little hold of any kind upon the material and terrestrial existence. So this material and terrestrial existence, we have very little hold on it, very little capacity to shape it, mold it, transform the society, transform the world. We may have high inner realizations and very little capacity for actual action in the world, which involves material means itself, including our bodily possibilities. That will be highly limited if we don't bring in this dimension of karma yoga, yoga of divine works, which means the will and its action in the world has to be consecrated so that the transformation can happen, an integral transformation can happen. But still, each must follow his nature, because each one of us, we are a unique creation, each one, like a unique fingerprint. So there is a uniqueness to the individual, and therefore a unique trail to be followed. So that we should not deny. But still, each must follow his nature, and there are always difficulties that have to be accepted for some time if we are to pursue our natural path of yoga. There are always difficulties that have to be accepted for some time. So we do accept the difficulties, but we are not accepting it as a forever. Since we have to begin according to our nature, we may start with knowledge, we may start with love, we may start with will, even though we know that we have to integrate them all down the line. So, but still, each must follow his nature, and there are always difficulties that have to be accepted for some time if we are to pursue our natural path of yoga. Each one has a natural path. This is not a cookie cutter solution that works for everyone the same way, everyone doing the same practice. No, there is a unique trail for each person. Yoga is, after all, primarily a change of the inner consciousness and nature. And if the balance of our parts in such that, and if the balance of our parts is such that this must be done first with an initial exclusiveness and the rest left for later handling, we must accept the apparent imperfection of the process. An apparent imperfection. When we accept focusing on first the inner development and then applying it in the outer, it is only an apparent imperfection we are accepting temporarily, knowing fully that we need to bring this into the outer life. Because yoga is, first of all, an inner shift in consciousness, a change of our inner consciousness and nature. That is the foundation. It's an inside-out process. That is the first foundation to be laid. But the problem is when we exclusively focus on that and go too deep in that dimension, gradually losing the ability to engage with the outer life. However, we need to start with that inner shift, and temporarily accepting that external work need to wait for some time, but it is only a temporary thing. Yoga is, after all, primarily a change of the inner consciousness and nature, and if the balance of our parts is such that this must be done first with an initial exclusiveness. Initial exclusiveness. It is only an initial exclusiveness, not a permanent later condition. And the rest left for later handling, we must accept the apparent imperfection of the process. It is an imperfect process, but we must accept if that is what is meant for a particular individual. Yet, would the ideal working of an integral yoga be a movement, even from the beginning, integral in its process, and whole and many-sided in its progress. So the ideal process of integral yoga still will be a movement which is, even from its the beginning, integral in its process. An integral process where all sides are brought together. The knowledge, the love, and will are activated and mobilized from the very beginning. That will be an ideal. If that ideal is not possible, you start with one that is naturally open to you. Just like Sri Aurobindo in the last chapter spoke about the concentration. There are two centers of concentration. One is above, where there's a divine mind above, and there is a deep within, the divine soul within. Ideally concentrating on both. And these are the leverage points by which we can uplift our nature. If it is not possible to do both, you choose one that is natural. The same way, there is entry points. Knowledge, love, and will. Ideal will be moving these triple keys together. If it is not possible, then one of them. Yet the ideal working of an integral yoga be a movement even from the beginning, integral in its process and whole and many-sided in its progress. The very progress of yoga is many-sided. There is a physical development, there is a vital development, mental development, psychic development, all that. Everything has to go together. In any case, our present preoccupation is with a yoga, integral in its aim and complete movement, but starting from works and proceeding by works. Because this section of the book, he is bringing in yoga of divine works. We are clarifying that integral yoga requires an integral movement and process. Even within that context, if we are starting from the yoga of works, proceeding by works, although at each step more and more moved by a vivifying divine love and more illumined by a helping divine knowledge. So you may start by works, but you are in each step learning to open to that vivifying divine love and more illumined by a helping divine knowledge. Consciously learning to open to the divine knowledge and love, even when we start with the will, with the works. So in any case, our present preoccupation is with the yoga. Present preoccupation, he is referring to this particular part of the writing he is going through, the yoga of divine works. Even there, when we are operating, integral in its aim and complete movement, but starting from works and proceeding by works. That we are accepting. This is how we are starting, by work and proceeding by work. Even in that context, at each step more and more moved by a vivifying divine love and more illumined by a helping divine knowledge. This we must always keep in mind. To consciously cultivate that opening to the divine love, consciously cultivate the inpouring of the divine knowledge that illumines, so that movement can progressively become integral and we don't get handicapped down the line. So often what happens is people who find themselves, who are very good karma yogis, because their will is their primary faculty, and they find it difficult to sit and meditate or go inward and open to the divine love. This may not be their natural inclination. So they go on working, intensely working, and in the process miss out on the other dimensions. And even find it difficult to be sitting in a restful condition that is opening to the self-existent divine love and self-revealing divine knowledge. We need all three. then only the integral development is possible. And an integral movement, or rather movement become integral when all three are brought together. So in any case, our personal preoccupation is with the yoga, integral in its aim and complete movement, but starting from works and proceeding by works, although at each step more and more moved by a vivifying divine love and more illumined by a helping divine knowledge. So with that, we come to the end of this episode. Please do share your insights. Which is your favorite entry point? Are you a person who enjoys consecration of your works, or natural inclination is to study and increase in knowledge, or moving through bhakti and devotion? What is your natural entry point? What is native to you? Please do share your insights. See you next week.